Noomi Rapace, and director and executive producer Michelle MacLaren. Good times. Let's make sure your mics work.
Check. Hi, check.
So, how you guys doing?
Good, great to be here.
So I like throwing a few curveballs at the beginning of every Q&A before we get into why you guys are here. And first of all, congratulations on the show. If someone has actually never seen anything you've directed or anything you've been in, what is the first thing you'd like them watching and why, and besides Constellation?
I would say Lamb, because that was me going back to my roots, reconnecting with myself and where it all started.
I would probably say Breaking Bad.
Yeah, I agree.
Kind of changed my life.
What is the most nervous you've been the night before the first day of filming something?
I'm nervous every time. I call it healthy nerves, and I hope I always have them. So I'm always a little bit scared.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, same. Just kind of feels like I know less and less the more I work. I used to be more cocky and just block it out, I guess. But like, maybe Prometheus. The first day we were shooting in London in studio, and couldn't sleep. I didn't sleep like not even a minute. I was like wide awake, just waiting for my pickup. Yeah.
I've heard that from a lot of actors, especially the first few days, because the truth is, like 2-3 days in, you could be replaced.
Yeah.
Like you really don't know. I mean, it's happened. Like Eric Stoltz in Back to the Future.
Yeah, it's true.
You know.
Yeah. God, I haven't even thought about that. You shouldn't have told me.
Very sorry. Jumping into why I get to talk to you guys. So, for both of you, and it's a little bit generic, but what was it about this material that said, I need to be involved with this?
Oh, wow. I would say it was a combination for me. It was the scripts, beautifully, crazy good, written by Peter Harness, Apple TV Plus. I've been following the stuff they've been doing and the quality and the level it's on, and Michelle MacLaren, the package of that and the character, Joe. It's like just instant love for me.
Oh, thank you. For me, the scripts. I read the scripts and I thought, oh, these are fantastic, challenging, exciting. I fell in love with the relationship between Jo and her daughter, and I love that at the root of this, it's about a mother and daughter, and a mother fighting to get back to her daughter in very extreme circumstances. And I had never done space before, and I love to take on things that are a challenge, and this was a gigantic challenge.
Apple TV is making my favorite sci-fi of any channel, any streamer. What is going on over there that has caused this amazing sci-fi to be produced at one place?
I think you're the lady to answer this one.
Wow. I'm not that inside there. I think Zach and Jamie have great taste. I think that the thing I love about this is my third show with Apple TV Plus, and they hire creatives and they let us be creative. And it's really lovely to be in a place that allows us to be imaginative and to execute it on a really in a very big, scopy manner, and that's exciting. And they have incredible filmmakers and unbelievable talent working for them, and so it's an exciting place to be.
One of the things, what do you actually want to tease people? What can you say about the first season of this show without spoiling things?
Well, it was kind of when we were shooting, it was days when I felt quite confused, and my character goes through a lot, and I kind of allowed myself to really swim in that uncertainty and stay there and not try to be ahead of the character. But it was sort of like looking at yourself in a broken mirror and just discovering new things constantly. So I would say that it is about finding your truth. And like for Jo, it's, she's an astronaut. She's been training extremely hard. They're not supposed to be emotional. They're rational. They look at proof, evidence, and then your entire body and your gut feeling and instincts are telling you something completely different. So that internal battle, that's kind of the journey I'm going on.
And she questions herself whether it's her sanity or whether something strange is really happening.
Yeah.
One of the things about a show like this is, and I'm curious, how much did Peter know ultimately where this thing is going? Like, you know what I mean? Because this is like a high concept show, and I'm like, Noomi, was it pitched to you as like I have like a 3-season plan, or this is the thing I'm thinking about. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I think he has, Peter is an amazing person, and sometimes when I'm asking him, he's like, is it this? He's like, could be. It's like, okay, but is it? He was like, you know, so I do think he knows, he has an idea where it goes, but he was also allowing us to, he gave Joe to me, and he was like, you know, Joe is yours now. You know, and he's a great collaborator.
And I think Peter wrote this for you. I mean, there was nobody else we had in mind to play Joe. I don't know what we would have done if you had said no.
No, me neither. I would have, no, I don't know. I would have hunted the person down. No, but it was a bit creepy actually when I did read it. And it just felt like Peter knew too much about me, and it felt like he's been looking into my life through some weird lens and just kind of put it in there.
Well, I am curious, how much did you, because one of the things that I think when you rewatch, after you've seen I've seen the first 3, and I think if you rewatch the first episode, you will pick up things that you didn't notice on the first viewing. That it requires great writing, great directing, and knowing ultimately where you're going. So I want to talk about it, but not talk about it.
Sure. So Peter had written all 8 episodes before we started shooting. I mean, he's still working on number 8 while we're in it, because things evolve. But we cross-boarded the show, and without giving too much away, the episodes are very intertwined. So I worked very closely with the other directors. There's certain things we set up in episode 1 and 2 that you think are one thing and will pay off as something else later. I know I'm speaking of riddles. But I also think that it's possible that you might finish episode 8, hopefully you love it, and your mind's a little bit more open and curious, and you go back to it and watch episode 1 and notice things you didn't notice the first time around. There's a lot of Easter eggs.
I was going to ask you, for both of you, and you sort of answered it, but what do you think fans are going to say when they finish episode 8? Will they want like season 2 immediately, or will they be like, I need to rewatch this right now?
Oh, wow. I mean, I hope they want to rewatch it and want season 2. I mean,
Well, without giving anything away, hopefully they go, wow.
or like, oh, fuck.
But hopefully, hopefully you watch it again and want season 2 and 3 and 4.
Well, one of the things that, like, and I said this before that we started the screening, but it looks like a movie. Like, you built that space station, and I believe you built it in the soundstage that Fritz Lang did in Metropolis back in the 20s. So talk a little bit about being in a soundstage with that much history and building something of that scale for a TV show and on a TV show budget.
That was incredible. When I first walked into the stage, it's the biggest stage I'd ever seen. It's an effects stage. It's gigantic, and it was empty. And I thought, oh wow, are we going to fill this? And it wasn't enough room. We had to go into another stage. Andy Nicholson, our production designer, built a life-size replica of the ISS, not the entire ISS, but huge pieces of it. We had the American section, we had the Russian section, and we had Martin Goers, our special effects and stunt coordinator. He built rigs on the ceiling of the stage. We had so we could run cables down, and the actors hung from wires, and they could go backwards and forwards and sideways. And the set was very accurate. And the ISS was not meant for people to walk on. It's for them to float in. So it is not very practical for filming. So what we had to do was take it out in sections, and when we needed to put the camera or people on the floor, we had to bring in platforms on the floor. And we wanted it to feel very claustrophobic and real. So we would take out the ceiling when the actors were flying. We would take out sections to bring cameras and lights in. But we try to keep the set as complete as possible, which is less expensive for visual effects. But also, I think it puts you guys in a place.
Yeah, it was not easy. And Michelle is a very stubborn and passionate director, so she did not settle for 95% good. She was like, it needs to be perfect. So the floating was definitely the hardest part. I was training for 2 months before, just working up my core and my balance, my body control. And then it was a huge team effort. We had an amazing crew. I mean, me floating is probably 10 people being hyper concentrated on my every move and my shift in weight, and one person giving signal to someone else who's sitting with a remote control, and the camera being perfectly timed. It was very intense.
And I'll just add to that it wasn't just wires. We also had other rigs. Noomi could be, or the other astronauts could be sitting on a rolling chair or lying on their stomach on a rolling table. And one of the hardest things was miming. And Noomi did a lot of those close-ups, and she was actually miming. So while they're doing all this and trying to remember that they're floating, they're acting. And it was...
But it's standing in blank, so you're holding your whole body like this, and that's supposed to be floating and effortless. So, and Michelle was always one more. And I was dripping.
Noomi and I got very close in making this too, because especially when we were in the Soyuz, it was very, very tight in there, and the only way for us to communicate was putting an earpiece in Noomi's ear, and then I was talking to her outside of the Soyuz. So it's like we were.
I could not get in. I could not get out. I was stuck, and I had God in my ear, just following blindly what she said.
When you saw the shooting schedule, what day did you have circled in terms of, oh my God, I can't wait to film this? And which day did you have circled in terms of, holy F, how are we going to film this?
I mean, we started with, one of the first things we did was the fire scenes.
No. We started with the cabin, the interior of the cabin, which is very emotional.
Yeah.
And that
we started in a different place, and it was where my character is in a very specific state, and it was it was brutal to jump right in there, but it also we just ripped the Band-Aid off straight away. It's there's no room to think or to consider or to be, all the nervous, I was so nervous, I was scared. It was after day one, I was okay, I'm in.
It actually worked for the scenes that we were shooting. When you watch episode 2, keep in mind that the opening scene in the cabin was shot in the first week of production. And I think it worked for everybody, especially the girls, the twins who both played Alice. They were really nervous, but it worked. They were amazing, absolutely fantastic. Awesome, hardworking, amazing actors. And but I think that worked. I think it helped. But to answer your question, when I looked at the schedule, I just looked at the zero-G stuff and said, not enough time. There's not enough time. There's never enough time to shoot zero-G. That's just not possible. But we also had this massively huge, ambitious schedule location-wise. So we actually shot the exterior of the cabin and all the snow stuff you see in the Arctic, in northern Finland. And we built the cabin in the summer. We went and found the property, and the lake was not solid. And we picked the location, and the crew built the cabin in the summer, and then we waited for the lake to freeze over and for the snow to come, and we shot that in the winter. And during the summer, we shot the ISS, and we went to Morocco for Kazakhstan. And I have to say, that was one of my favorite things that I was looking forward to, was Morocco, because I love shooting in Morocco, but also what happens there, and I can't tell you. But
it was maybe not my favorite place to shoot, because I was stuck in this so-called the spacesuit and in a wig and space helmet, and it was extremely hot. And there was we're shooting up on a hill, 360, and it was rough. It was tough.
Physically, this show was physically demanding for Noomi and emotionally demanding in every way. Yeah. And she is a force of nature. I mean, she's incredible. You are an animal, and you hit it all out of the park.
Honey badger.
I was going to say, you're in an awful lot of scenes, so how excited were you when you saw Jonathan Banks without you doing stuff?
I mean, I just wanted to be. Actually, I sometimes I stay to just watch him work. He's incredible and just like pure masterclass. Watching him, a gift to be working with him and to be around him, and he's an incredible human as well. So, yeah.
So I'm fascinated by the editing process. So how did your episodes possibly change in ways you didn't expect? And I'm not sure, as an executive producer, if you can talk about the show itself once you had all 8 episodes, because you never really, you know what I mean? Sometimes stuff happens and you realize this isn't working, we gotta redo this or that.
Right, so I can't talk too much about that, but I can tell you that we actually, in the first cut of episode 1, we revealed a lot more than we're more obvious about certain things than we ended up being. And we looked at it and we thought, audiences are so sophisticated, they're so smart, we want them to be part of trying to figure this out, we want them to be invested in this journey. So we pulled way back on that. That was one of the things we did. And there was a scene that I shot on a cruise ship for episode 2, and we looked at it and Peter and I were like, you know what, that works better in the story in episode 3. So sometimes that happens. I mean, these scripts are very tight, but there's an evolution. And I would say that the biggest thing that we played around with in post is how much do we reveal and how much we don't reveal, and when we do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that has to be, did you guys do any sort of friends and family screenings and learn from those, or was it more just you guys in the editing room?
I'll just say my brother's here tonight, and he could probably recite this. Thank you, Doug. So yes, I do drag in close people to the editing room, and I did have some really wonderfully talented friends that came in and gave me some really good advice, and it was really helpful.
Do you end up with, does this show like this end up with a lot of deleted scenes or no?
No,
No,
I
yeah.
actually think everything is kind of in there.
Yeah.
Weird, yeah.
I mean, there's some stuff on the floor. We've tightened some stuff up, but
Yeah.
but everything is.
I mean, it's really a testimony to Peter Harner's writing, that he was so, a lot of times when you come in, I want to remove a lot of dialogue. I think most things are oversaid and kind of, don't think that the audience will understand, and it's over explaining, and it's like, the audience, you will know, kind of want to say less. And this is, it's so sparse and it's so spot on, and it was really tight, as you said. It was very rarely we needed to take anything out or add anything, really.
It's nice. I mean, less is more, and it's nicer to see it than say it. And Peter shares that philosophy, which is wonderful. That a writer feels that way. So yeah, it's great, and they're very compelling scripts.
One of the things I think why the show works so well is that it's very grounded and realistic, but it has like a fantastical element, if you will. Can you sort of talk about that aspect, that it is mostly very, very grounded?
So it was really important to Peter and I and Noomi and all of us that this is very grounded and very realistic. And everything you're seeing is as accurate as we could under the circumstances. Our consultant was Scott Kelly, the astronaut, and he actually came to Berlin and worked with the actors and worked with me and worked with the props people and really helped us figure out how to make this as realistic as possible on big levels and small levels. I said to him, okay, well, when Paul is having his arm removed, how do we keep him from moving around? And he said, duct tape. He said, there's no resistance. You don't need much. We use duct tape for everything. And we just love the idea of using things in space that you would use differently on Earth. And we do that. Keep your eye out for a few other things. But everywhere we went, we tried to make it as grounded and real as possible, so that when we do introduce the elements of the fantastical, so to speak, that hopefully you're so invested in the reality of this, you'll go on the journey with us.
When you saw that you had to spend a day in the astronaut, the what's the right word?
EVA suit?
Yeah, the EVA suit.
Orland suit.
Yeah. Were you just like, at what point did you say, oh my effing God, I can't do this another day? Because I've spoken to actors that have to wear that.
That suit is so heavy. It's impossible to carry it myself. I was on a crane, and even then it was extreme, like just the movements, just to move my arm. And I trained hard. I was like kind of fit, so I was like preparing. And I thought I was going to be able to last through the days, but like in the end of the days, I could barely like lift my arms because that's how heavy it is, but that's the way it is for them. And kind of everything, I think all the resistance and all the difficulties and just the mental state that Joe is in, I really tried to just use it, and we were all kind of just embracing and making the difficulties ours come to work in our favor. But I mean, it felt really kind of magical that those days, even though it was hard to be in the aviator suit and to do that, like, you know, those scenes just felt like kind of a dream for me.
This show does not work without the relationship with the I forget the character, Alice, without the actors that play Alice. So talk a little bit about, you know, were you able to bond prior to filming? Like, how do you form a relationship with actors that are 12 that have to have these really meaningful, you know, and not to spoil anything, but there's some pretty, you know, there are some scenes that are coming up.
Rosie and Davina are just incredible, and I remember first time I met them. Do you remember they came to my house in London? We sent you photos, and they were just instantly. They're so sharp. They're so on it. Sometimes when you work with kids, you need to trick them, and you kind of need to kind of constantly surprise them to make them awake and to stay like in it and to not start repeating something. But they were just like proper actors. Like we were like partners in crime. It felt like.
Yeah, Rosie and Davina, so we had hired a child casting director to help us find them, and they had narrowed it down to 3 sets of twins, and I was very skeptical if we were going to find twins that both could act, because often you'll have one that's a good actor and one ends up being a stand-in, because they both don't have the same ability. And back when we first started casting, it was still, COVID was still around, so we were doing it through Zoom, and I first met Rosie and Davina, and I was watching them on Zoom, and they were in separate rooms in their house on separate computers, and I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, do we find them? But this is the first people we've seen. This is amazing. I think this is them. And they were so together and so mature, and I thought, can they be kids? Yeah. And they were cutting in between the two kids, and they didn't know I could see this, and I caught them sticking their tongues out at each other, and I went, okay, that's them. And so we didn't have a lot of time together just because of the circumstance of the world.
But I think also the way we worked and the way you worked with them was really to involve them and to like, if there was a scene when I needed to raise my voice or shake them and be a bit like kind of more violent in my energy, I would kind of go there before and say like, okay, my voice is gonna be up here, don't be scared, just to kind of really make them feel that they were part of it. Like, is this okay? And they were quite clear in their communication, and if they didn't understand, I was like, I wouldn't say it this way, like I would say it differently. I think they kind of grew a confidence to feel that they could speak up.
They did. They were great collaborators, and the thing that's amazing about them is they were interchangeable. They are both really fantastic actors, and we could literally, and the reason you have twins is because you're restricted with time with children, and we could time out on one and be in the middle of a scene, and they tag team in, the other one would step in, and we just continue on. It was amazing, and I got into editing, and I could not tell who was who in the editing room.
I've never heard this about twins on any performance. It's crazy. For soon-to-be fans, after they've seen more episodes, what do you think would surprise people to learn about the making of this show?
Oh, wow. What do you think, Michelle?
Maybe how much of it was practical?
Yeah, kind of old school. It showed quite old school. There's not a lot of green screen, and it was quite real. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we went to the places. We built the things. We did do some volume stage work. When you see the interior of the car in Finland or Sweden, story-wise, that is on a volume stage. But otherwise, everything was shot.
I mean, it was extremely cold. It was so cold, so you know, we step out in the morning, you can't. It's like instantly, like your whole face just like you can't speak basically. And it was like, okay, I'm supposed to act in this all day. So like we had the most extreme elements, and just
we did. We went from the extreme heat to extreme cold, and trying to access a set that has basically a 270 view in snow and get your crew and your actors in there without ruining your set is an incredible accomplishment. And the finished crew, and I thought, I don't understand how we're gonna do this. They had the most incredible plan that they executed beautifully. And it was one of my favorite things when I went to set in the morning. It was dark out because we shot this in February and the sun never came above
It's
the
like
horizon.
2 hours daylight in
Yeah,
Sweden.
but
Yeah.
you never see the sun. So we actually shot day for night. But when I came to set in the morning, it was pitch black. And I'd go to this parking lot and I'd get out of my car and I'd get on the back of a snowmobile, and we'd go on these trails out into the lake. And you get out into this bright lake that was lit by the moon and the stars and quite often the northern lights. And it was this incredible calm, and you just hear the hum of the snowmobile. And I knew that this incredibly hard, demanding day was coming, but I really loved that piece before we started.
And you had the weird like clicking sound under the ice. It's like a bit scary. It's like this surely cannot be strong enough for these vehicles. And they were like, yeah, it is, but you know.
I read that you used, and I'm looking at it, the red Komodo cameras paired with anamorphic lenses. So why did you pick, or how did you work with your DP on crafting which cameras you wanted to use?
Well, Marcus Froder, our cinematographer for 1 and 2, is amazing. I mean, this guy is, and I say this with all the love in the world, he is a camera nerd in the best way. And he knows cameras and lenses, and I mean, he's just amazing. And we knew we wanted to shoot an anamorphic, but we had to convince Apple that we were gonna shoot it in anamorphic, because not every show gets to shoot anamorphic. So we did a bunch of tests, and Marcus is much better about talking about this, but he really used lens flares as part of, it's kind of a psychological trick. I mean, when you're in space and you're outside of the ISS, you don't want to be aware of the camera, but you kind of want to be familiar of what you're seeing. And we as human beings are used to looking through a lens, and you might see a flare. And so we actually put in and post a lot of subtle flares in there. I can't say for sure why he chose the red. He loves the red camera, and it's a fantastic camera. Part of the reason may have been all the rigs that we were using. So we had Steadicam, we used a Ronin, we used a thing called the Chicken Cam, I can't remember the actually professional name. We used the Skynamic drone, which is, if there's filmmakers in here and you guys don't know this drone, it is life-changing because it's not just a drone. It can be a dolly, it can be a crane, it can be a Steadicam, it can be whatever you need it to be. And when you're shooting in deep snow or way out in the desert in sand, this is amazing, and it was awesome.
I was actually going to ask you about this drone because I read about it. How big is this drone? Do you remember, do you know how much it costs? Is it something crazy?
So when we shot this, they had rushed to finish this in China and get it to us, and we weren't even allowed to photograph it, although I did. I snuck some photographs. Now it's all out there, but at the time it was super, super top secret. And it wasn't that big. I mean, it was.
Oh yeah,
It was like
like
this.
like a bird, like an
Yeah.
eagle, sort of.
Yeah, and it. I have no idea how much it cost, but we did crash it once because it froze, and the operator his face looked like, oh, maybe it is expensive. But
Yeah.
I mean, we had a couple with us, so, and it was okay. We ended up not breaking it. We thawed it out, and it was okay.
But
so-
that's, I mean, also because the conditions, when you shoot in that, like all of a sudden it's a snowstorm or the wind is changing, so it's like so many elements for you guys to
Yeah.
constantly consider
Yeah.
and rethink. And can we shoot this? Can we, we're like all like standing by it constantly? So can we do a drone shot? No, we have to move in because the wind changed. And
Yeah. But I will clarify that this drone can operate up to like -20 or -30 or
Yeah.
something, and we couldn't. Most mechanical things would have frozen in the situation that we were in, and this drone didn't, except for that one time. But we flew it up maybe a little too high. So.
It's interesting because I've spoken to some filmmakers and they love the idea of using drones. I think of Michael Bay and what he did on his last movie, it was basically drone central. And then other filmmakers are not really using drones. So how do you decide where and when you want to use something like that?
Well, for me, I have to say I was a little on the not loving drone side until I met this drone, and
Until you started the relationship.
until I started this drone relationship.
Right.
But I've worked with a lot of different drones, and I've worked with some, but it's really more about the drone operators a lot of the time. I mean, if you have a great drone, you need great drone operators, and I've worked with all different types. So this, we had great drone operators and we had a great drone. And this, I'm now over on the other side. I mean, I never want to not work with these guys.
Right, so you're basically, I was gonna make a joke about, anyway, let me switch off. So you guys are up here and you're in the limelight for the show, but the truth is there's hundreds, if not so many more people behind the scenes that helped you make this show. So for each of you, who's like an unsung hero that you want to shine a light on? Someone who is integral to pulling this show off, that helped you with your performance, or, you know what I mean, like, was just...
I would say the stunt team on this one, they were incredible and like just kind of thinking on their feet and finding solutions for the floating, for like, oh, can we do this? Is this possible to do a shot when I'm kind of floating around this corner? And you and me were like, yeah, we can do it, we can do it. They were like, give us some time to figure it out. And they just worked so hard with all the elements. And when we're up in the snow and like, you know, just the helicopters and yeah, they were amazing. That Martin and his whole team, like, head off, like,
Yeah, I would agree with you. They're absolutely phenomenal. Our whole crew was incredible. I loved everybody on the crew, and everybody was so passionate about it and cared about it deeply. And it was such an honor to work with everybody. I would say for me, one of the many unsung heroes is Doug Lamore, who is our special effects supervisor.
yeah.
And he just would smile.
He was
and
like a
nod
wizard.
and-
It was like, we all looked at him, Doug, is it possible? He was like, and we're like, okay, we can do it. Like, it was always up to him to, yeah.
I'll tell you that shot with when the van is driving up to the exterior of Baikonur Mission Control, and there's those camels out there. I saw that's taken right out of a picture of the actual Baikonur in Kazakhstan, and I thought, oh, that's so interesting. You know, one of the highest technologically advanced places, you know, sending people up into space, and there's camels around it. And I said, really, really, really want these camels in the shot, but they're supposed to be 2-hump camels, and we can only get a 1-hump camel. But Doug Lamore, he made it a 2-hump camel.
I think that's one of the reasons why it looks so good in the first episode is how much you did practically. And you know, the thing is, and I think you could talk about this, when you are shooting a lot practically and then you use VFX wizardry to amplify the practical shot, all of a sudden you don't see where the VFX are.
It was a great collaboration. I mean, it really was. Marcus Federer and Doug and Martin and all of us, it really was a mix. And I personally prefer going as practical as possible. I love old school.
But it was very, I mean, I think you really invited to that, but like, you know, we were rehearsing something and the stunt people and the wire, like all the guys was controlling the wires. It was like, maybe this is not gonna work. And then it was like, and I was like, can I try? Just go, and then can we try with me and Marcus, or like with the camera and me moving and just like doing it just myself. So we were like constantly finding solutions and being, you know, kind of open and improvising, weirdly enough, in this extremely complicated setup.
So true. I mean, we were learning as we went every day. We learned new ways to execute this.
All I can say is I've seen the first 3 episodes, and I really can't wait to watch the next 5. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this episode, please use this thing called social media to spread the word. Again, it comes out on Wednesday, the first 3 episodes. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for Noomi and Michelle.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.